Summertime, and the living's easy. Bradley's on the microphone with Ross and G. All the people at the dial, wow. We're qualified to represent the LPC. Me and Julie, we're gonna dance till the rhythm gets harder. Me and my girl. Happy summer, everybody, in the Northern Hemisphere. What's gone on so far? It's Taylor Swift's summer. I finished my first year, which is also my sophomore year of college. It's only 2 years to go. Crazy. Get knee surgery on my other knee soon. I've had the opportunity to travel a bit this summer. My family and I went to Montreal, and then my friend and I are going to visit our other friend in Salt Lake City. I hope you are having a good summer so far, and I thought today we could just talk a little bit about the books I've read so far this year. Take it back to the old times. With that said, let me grab my phone to look at my app on which I track my books. The most recent book I finished was Sea Change by Gina, Chung, and this follows a young woman named Ro, short for Aurora. She's Korean American, the daughter of immigrants, so first generation, and she is working at an aquarium, I believe, in Rhode Island. The aquarium is her only tie to her father, who has passed away, so we presume he was lost at sea on an expedition into the Bering Strait, where he had previously rescued an octopus named Dolores, and Dolores now resides at the aquarium that Ro works at. However, Dolores is potentially going to be purchased by an independent private buyer, which throws Ro into a bit of an existential crisis. Dolores represents like the hope she has for her father returning, a lot of the good parts of her childhood. Her parents had a rocky marriage, and at the same time that this is happening, she's struggling in her personal life. She's grown apart from her best friend and her mom in her father's absence, and her boyfriend, who has just dumped her, is about to go on one of the first expeditions to Mars. This is a really good book. I will read anything with the ocean. I really like the ocean. I don't know if I'll read Moby Dick. Felt very coming of age, very authentic. I think it was a debut. Good job! I thought it was pretty rock solid. Next, I read Citizen, an American Lyric by Claudia Rankine. I think they just said Rankine in the audiobook. One of the two for sure. It's a poetic commentary on individual and societal woes and joys. And I thought it was incredible. It was very reflective of the deeply ingrained racism and capitalism and brutality in the United States' fabric, and it felt very interesting to read in the wake of when it was written. It was written, I believe, or at least published, I want to say 2016, let me check, 2014. So it was definitely interesting to read about everything that had happened before I was really involved in the political world or aware of the political world. And contrast it and connect it to the oppression that continues to this day. So I brought my car to Cali, the Kia Soul, and love it. It's a rock star. Surfs up. And on these drives between California and Colorado, my dad and I listened to an audiobook. So he's been on a bit of a Stephen King kick lately. Stephen King is very hit or miss for me, per establishment. But this time we read Firestarter. It was okay. I don't have much to say. Sometimes he does really lengthy character descriptions that I honestly think are kind of detrimental to his development. My dad disagrees. He thinks that those giant paragraphs add to the depth of the characters. I just get caught up in the verbiage. But the time before that, when we drove from Colorado to California to bring my car to school, we read The Institute by Stephen King, which was also very long. I loved it. I really enjoyed it. It felt kind of like Stranger Things before Stranger Things to me. I really connected with the child characters. Still don't like how he writes women. But you know what? There was a solid plot, and it was fun. And I sometimes was even on, not the tip of my toes, the edge of my seat, wondering what would happen next. For school, I read a few books this year. I read Envisioning Black Feminist Voodoo Aesthetics, African Spirituality in American Cinema, Black Diasporic Worlds, Origins and Evolutions from a New World Slaving by Kameelah L. Martin. Dr. Martin is so cool. I emailed them at one point because I thought I couldn't find the book, and they were going to send me a bunch of articles because I couldn't find the book, but then it turned out it was in my library all along, which is a little embarrassing. at the end of the day, I got the book, and I focused particularly on the section about Disney and its implementation and exploitation of the priestess trope, in which typically a Black American woman is forced to become kind of a center or pillar of community spirituality, and the hardship and sacrifice and toll that takes on her is ignored in favor of like a mystical, magical aesthetic. I was writing a paper for my film aesthetics class about this trope and about just kind of the flattening of voodoo and hoodoo in Disney films. Aestheticism over actual appreciation. It was, Martin's incredible. She's brilliant. Her work is brilliant. It's one of the most accessible academic texts I've ever read. Really do recommend. If you can get it in a library, it's really expensive. I read the Summer I Turned Pretty series because I bought the first book and I liked it. It was fine. And then my friend Katie from New Jersey had the other two at school, and I was like, I may as well, thank you for letting me borrow them, may as well read them before the year's up. Guys, it's not To All the Boys I've Loved Before. It's not very good, okay? Conrad and Jeremiah both kind of suck. Conrad reminds me a little bit of my ex. The character development wasn't there for me. My favorite character was killed off. Not really a spoiler. I do like the summer vibes. I like the beach scenes. I enjoy the show just for the fluffiness of it, you know? Sometimes those shows serve a purpose. Sorry, Jenny. I love you. I really loved To All the Boys I've Loved Before, which I also reread this year. I don't have really anything new to say. I just love it. It occurred to me that the rival couple, when Laura Jean and Peter are going to estate sales to get stuff for his mom's vintage shop, the rival couple, like the old couple that also is going and takes all the good stuff, they're called the Epsteins. I'm an Epstein! That was fun. I reread Murder on the Orient Express, of course. I've read it once at least every year since 2019. I love mysteries, and recently I've discovered I love horror movies, so that's been a good revelation. I read a couple romance books this year. I'm sorry to say, a few of them were Colleen Hoover. I am not for the humbling of romance novels or romance writers, but I agree with the critiques and criticisms about the ways in which she glorifies abuse, specifically November 9th. That I read. There's a twist at the end. I was shocked. But not in like a good way. I was just kind of horrified. And then the couple ended up together anyway, despite this horrible addition that she just felt like including. It was like Before Sunrise, but really bad. And then I took a break from Colleen Hoover and I read Archer's Voice by Mia Sheridan, because a girl I went to high school with really loves Mia Sheridan and posts about Mia Sheridan all the time. It was fun. It did what it needed to do. It was cute. I didn't like that there were police. I do remember there was also a beach, though. I like the idea of a beach. I read The House of Spirits by Isabel Allende. This was a recommendation by my friend Nora, who's going to be my roommate next year, which is so exciting. Nora loves Pride and Prejudice 2005. That's how you know you found a good egg. I really, really, really enjoyed this book. It's sort of a generational following of a family of women in Chile. The men are addressed to, but they all kind of suck. The women all have some sort of magical ingenuity or brilliance or spark about them that really makes them incredible. I loved all of them. There was one named Rosa, who was a mermaid, basically, and I want to be a mermaid so bad. I enjoyed the full circle structure the story has. It starts with a quote from one of the women's journals, and it ends on that same note. There was really no concrete plot except for following this lineage. It did delve a little bit into the history of Chile in terms of the revolution and dictatorships and military takeovers. So there was some commentary there, but I just really liked it. It took me a long time to read, mostly just because, you know, school, busy, lots going on, but I really liked it. And I think it's one I'll definitely revisit and get something new from as I grow up and relate to different women in the family at their different point in time. I read All About Love, New Visions by bell hooks. Love bell hooks, they're amazing. Just really, really, really insightful attempts at objectivity. Bell Hooks studies pop culture extensively, which was pretty revolutionary when she started. I think it's become more mainstream now, but she was exceptional. What I wouldn't have given to see her speak or meet her would have been insane. Then I read Bones and All. Haven't seen the movie yet. I did not know this was written by a vegan. Apparently, my friend Sahara tells me a lot of media about cannibalism is written by vegans, which is fascinating. It really is. It never occurred to me. Bones and All follows two teenagers who eat people. And it's kind of normal in this world in that it's rare, but there are a known kind of subset of humans that eat other people's flesh. They have to do it. It's a natural drive and instinct. It's not something they're proud of or want to do. And these two teenagers bond over this idiosyncrasy, I guess you could say. And it's basically a summer road trip. They go across the country, the United States, bonding, falling in love. There are twists and turns along the way. I really enjoyed it. It was a quick read. It was a good read. I read Brokeback Mountain because I watched the movie for the first time. I wanted to know how it related to or differentiated from the short story. I knew that during the filming of Brokeback Mountain, the author of the story gave a copy of it to each of the main actors, Heath Ledger and Jake Gyllenhaal. And in Jake Gyllenhaal's, it was addressed to Jake, and in Heath Ledger's, it was addressed to his character, Enos. And it was a mistake that she did not correct because they believed that Heath Ledger really truly embodied that character. Brokeback Mountain is imperfect, right? There's the debate about whether or not straight actors should play queer characters, but I don't really think that that is the problem. I think that that's kind of a distraction from the real issue, which is that there are not enough stories about queer people from enough range of writers and creators that are greenlit in Hollywood to be made. There's not enough options for it to make sense to cast straight people and queer characters or roles. I read 101 Essays That Will Change the Way You Think by Brianna Wiest. Don't really remember much. I do know that I was pretty depressed around the time I read this. It was an audiobook, and I found a couple of the essays pretty enlightening. Did I write a review? I didn't even write a review. It was good. I think it's one of the few self-help-ish books I would recommend. In general, I find the self-help genre to be a massive red flag. This one was pretty good. It was pretty good. Not perfect. I remember there being some issues about how it dealt with weight, but in general, pretty decent. I read The Maid by Nita, Prose. I enjoyed it a lot. I'll devour a mystery anytime. We definitely had a neurodivergent main character, which was a cool perspective to have in a murder mystery, because I felt like as a neurotypical reader, I noticed and picked up on some things throughout the story that the character didn't pick up on, so the audience may know a little bit more than the character if they're neurotypical and fall into the same thinking patterns as I do, which is of course a massive generalization. But by the end of the story, you realize that our main character knew a lot the whole time that was hinted at that I did not pick up on. So it was really cool to read a murder mystery from a different perspective and through the eyes of someone who just noticed different things and had different details. My mom knew the twist at the end. She was expecting it, but I wasn't. I read Blue Horses by Mary Oliver. Just read nature poetry. If you're not, you're really missing out. You don't have to dive into it and make it really deep and complex and emotional, because sometimes it's just, grass. And that's great. And I think Mary Oliver was just an exceptional voice. When a Killer Calls, Cases of the FBI's Original Mindhunter #2 by John E. Douglas. They recommended this on My Favorite Murder. I wanted an audiobook. I was trying to finish a puzzle. That's the audiobook I picked. Mystery, crime, thriller. I remember nothing about it. Nothing, but I do know that this guy was some of the basis for the behavioral science unit in the FBI, which translates to the BAU for criminal minds. You know, we can have a whole conversation forever about the ethics of true crime, but I can't say I'd recommend or not recommend because I genuinely don't remember it. I read Regarding the Pain of Others by Susan Sontag. I'd classify this more as like a long essay or a novella than a full book. Again, just another fantastic mind. I'm so jealous of my friend Arezi because she goes to Pomona and like half the buildings are named after Susan Sontag, who was the best. The best, one of the best. I really enjoy the way she writes. I don't think she is as clear and succinct as Dr. Martin is in her book, if you're diving into academia, or as Bell Hooks, but definitely worth dissecting and considering. And those, my friends, are all of the books that I have read this year so far. I hope you're doing well. Currently I am reading, let me grab it, it's called Stone Blind. It is by Natalie Haynes, who I believe is a classicist. I enjoy reading retellings of Greek mythology by classicists. I think it's fun. I think it's Percy Jackson kid grown up, and I'm really liking it. It's a retelling of Medusa's story, which is often warped. Of course, she was taken advantage of by Poseidon in Athena's temple. Athena was pissed off, and so instead of punishing Poseidon, she punished Medusa with the snakes and fatal stare. It dissects what it means to be a monster, and whether a monster can be both beautiful and terrible at the same time, and if something becomes terrible simply because it's lost its mortality and innocence. I'm also currently reading Greek Lessons as an audiobook, and that is pretty short. I want to say it's only about 4 hours. I'm a little confused, I'm not gonna lie. It's twisty. You can kind of tell by the cover. There's a weird shape instead of a person's head, but I'm sticking with it because it seems really interesting, and I like the idea of reading 2 Greekish books at once. I also just checked out a library book called Skinship. Roxanne Gay has a 5-star review of it. Had to pick it up. But I'm happy to say, overall, that I've found happiness in delving back into storytelling. Lost it for a bit there. You can't overdo stuff. It's natural too, but it in general is not for the best. With that, I'll say bye for now. I'll see you later in the summer, and I'm gonna go pick up my family's mad greens order because we gardened all morning and we're all pooped out from planting native plants instead of grass, which is very empowering. It's one of the few things we plebeians can do to help with climate change. So if you're in crisis, think about planting a native plant if, when, and where you can. Ciao.